Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Fundamentalist Fails. Glad you could join me. Hello, my little internet rabbits. How are you doing? I am back. I am back. It's Friday. I feel great. I hope you are feeling fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. My greatest regret in doing this show is that I can't watch other shows at the same time. Yep, it's my greatest regret. I will take it. You know what? If that's my greatest regret, I'm doing pretty well. But today we've got a master of mathematics for you. Yes, John Lennox. He knows all the numbers. He knows way more numbers than me, trust me. So, when talking, actually, sorry, I have totally jumped the gun. I do have to announce I have a debate on tomorrow. I will grab a quick, just a quick cheeky link for you here. Just give me 1 second. I just have to find the quick cheeky link. Maybe it's not so quick. All right, gotcha. So the debate tomorrow is against CJ Cox. We are doing the does morality come from God? Should be a really interesting discussion. Should be a really good time. Debate tomorrow. Bam. Yeah, I'll just throw it in chat and pin it because yeah, I really want to. You know, if you want to, if you're interested, come along, come along. Would love to see you there. That would be fantastic. I will pin that. That is tomorrow at, I believe it's 7 Central. Oh, yeah. For some reason, my thing is, yeah. I'll fix that later. I'll fix that later. That's not a problem. Okay, fantastic. So good to see you all. Yeah. So that should be a really good time. But today we're doing a video from, well, it's so we're doing a bit of an inception today. So it's kind of sort of, we're doing a meta, which is a guy talking about John Lennox, and he's labeled it John Lennox gives the perfect answer to why did God command the killing in the Bible, right? Like the perfect command. The perfect answer, apparently. Apparently. So we're talking about the Amalekites. We're talking about the Midianites. We're talking sort of why do these orders to you know, Saul, for instance, to kill all of the Amalekites, like all of them. So I think that I think that John Lennox is somebody who, to say pompous is an understatement. Like, that would really be selling the man short. I think he really has a, you know, he really has a high opinion of his answers. He really has this massive opinion that he can't be wrong. He is primarily a mathematician, though, although I believe he has done sort of a, you know, some education in philosophy. I think his answers are like for somebody with, I think he's got a doctorate in philosophy, shockingly bad, like shockingly bad. I think that the he's not as bad as William Lane Craig when it comes to leaning in, oh, well, it was a good thing that all these slaughters took place. But he's almost as bad. So I'll get that up on the screen and we can go through and have a look. So don't forget, this is somebody talking about John Lennox's answers. He gives his own sort of supporting stuff, so it is very interesting, and I do want to go through the whole thing. But we will start off. This will be John Lennox.
What if one of the biggest objections to Christianity comes from the Bible itself?
I know, the contradiction. Yeah, a lot of the biggest objections to Christianity come from the Bible itself. Yeah, yeah, that's not surprising. Because, like, when it comes to Christianity, apart from the Bible, there is no other documents about Christian. Where do you think it's going to come from?
Did God command the killing of the Canaanites? Did God change from the Old Testament to the New Testament? And if God is perfectly good, how...
Well, you know, I mean, the apologetic is that God made a new covenant, and that's always the apologetics. that that has been the apologetics that I've heard. It's always been that apologetic, that it's the same God, it's the same, God didn't change, but he went, okay, let's update your terms and conditions to Apple 2.0. You are now going to do X, Y, and Z. Now that raises an interesting question of, how do we get our morality? Because if God can just sort of say, hey, it's changed, then but God's nature isn't changing, then it seems to me that morality is whatever God says it is, right? Like it's basically wherever God says that morality is. If God said tomorrow that infanticide or something was moral, then it would be moral. Like if the New Testament came out, right, and God said, hey, in actual fact, it isn't, now you shall unalive your children as soon as they hit air, then that would be the moral thing to do, kind of thing, right?
How do we make sense of those commands? In this discussion, Dr. John Lennox, a Christian apologist, mathematician, and former Oxford professor, responds to one of the most controversial questions in all of Christianity. This is one of those videos that gets more insightful as it unfolds. I'll be sharing my pastoral thoughts along the way. Let's watch this video together now.
I want to turn our attention now to God's view on justice here on earth, not the final justice here on earth. And I'm going to ask you a sort of provocative question, and that
Does God even have justice here on earth? I'm not sure that he does. I don't think that Christians are generally too concerned with justice here on earth. I feel like when it comes to enforcing justice on earth and enforcing justice after death, they're more concerned with the whole after death thing. That's really what they're concerned about.
that is, has God changed his mind? And so I'm going to revert back to Old Testament, and we're going to take Psalm 109.
So there's better cases of God changing his mind than sort of the update, if you will, the downloadable content that is the DLC that is the New Testament. There's better examples of God changing his mind where it clearly says that God has made up his mind and then changes it. When Moses was talking to God on the mountain, and sort of says, God says, I will destroy these people. And then Moses sort of says, hey, that's not going to look good. These people, they're stiff-necked people, but they followed you, and God says, well, I will relent then. I mean, that is absolutely, God changing his mind. The golden calf, it was Exodus 32. Exodus 32. So I'll just sort of go through this. This is God changing his mind. I have seen these people, and they are a stiff-necked people. Apparently so. Apparently they are a stiff-necked people. If you didn't know, you now do. Oop, that is not the thing that I want to get. Okay. Now leave me alone so my anger may burn against them and I may destroy them. Then I'll make you into a great nation, right? So he's basically saying, I will do this. I will do that. Moses sought favor. Lord, why should your anger burn against your people, whom you brought out of Egypt with great power and mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians say it was with evil intent you brought them out to kill them in the mountains and whiten them off the face of the earth? Turn your fierce anger, relent. The Lord relented and did not bring his people to disaster. So basically, Moses sort of says, hey, you have shown these people your great power, and now you're going to kill them. Don't do this, because it's a bad idea if you want to make them, a great people, and promise them an inheritance, and the Egyptians will say you're a cruel and heartless god. And he goes, okay, fair enough. I mean, gotta say, that's a clear case of God changing his mind. I have heard the argument that God wasn't actually going to destroy them, so he didn't change their mind, in which case God's lying, which is even worse. So either way you've got it, it's either that he lied to Moses and said, I'm going to destroy them, and he wasn't intending to destroy them, or he was going to destroy them, and after Moses pled with him, he changed his mind. One of the two. Both can't be correct. Like, one has to be true.
And this particular psalm is noted for some of the most frighteningly severe curses in the Bible. Let me just read a couple of them. It says...
No, she's pearl clutching already. Yeah, I knew I should have brought my pearls, is what she's saying. Yeah, so when you look at Psalms is an interesting one because it is poetry from the authors who, at the period where Psalms was written, was the exile to Babylon, right? Like, so it was where the Jewish people were kind of exiled to the Babylon. They were exiled out of their homeland, and they were really almost destroyed by the Babylonians. Now, it's important to remember that this is the part where you have things like, dash the children against the rocks and stuff. And a lot of it is poetry. It is trying to articulate how they feel about what's happened to them, right? So I don't think you can sort of take it as, well, they're commanded to do this by a god, right? Like, it is sort of saying, hey, this is how we feel about the situation, kind of thing, right? But there is a good point. Now, I will bring up this point later, but yes, it is poetry. It's like someone watching doing a song sort of someone doing a song that has some really confronting lyrics in it. It doesn't mean that they actually want to do that, or it's commanded, or it is, something that is required. It just means that they're trying to articulate how they feel about it. And Psalms is a bit like that. However, there's a definite problem there, but I'll get to that in a second after she does her example.
Let there be none to extend mercy unto him, neither let there be any to favor his fatherless children. And the psalm goes on to say, let his prosperity be cut off, and in the generation following let their name be blotted out. We can also, of course, turn not only to Psalm 109, but so the books of, Exodus and Deuteronomy.
Okay, so that's the thing about Psalms first. Yeah, Tommy, but like I gotta say, mate, it was actually like I was lazy. I'll admit it. I was just a bit, I've been doing other stuff, and this was in my back pocket because he edited it for me. Like, I didn't have to edit. What is it? Truth Unleashed. Truth Unleashed. Wow, that's ironic. So, it's good because, and he does add some stuff later. Is his additions transformative enough to say, like, he does fair use? No, probably not. I wouldn't say his content is transformative enough, like, to say that he gets around fair use. Like, my content is transformative enough, right? I am not there to present an argument for a god, or why God killed these things. What I'm here to do is do commentary and criticism on the arguments and the apologetics that he is giving for your enjoyment, and presumably you will enjoy by hitting that like button. Wow, that was smooth. I'm getting better at this. Damn, that was smooth. That was like inserted right in there. That was beautifully parked right in there. Look at that. I'm going to get better at this, I swear. This whole YouTube thing kicks my ass, but hey, one day, mate, I'm going to be a contender. One day.
Where we have God's commandment to genocide in the invasion of Canaan, and the permission of his permission of putting the Israelites into slavery in Egypt. So,
yep, sure do. Sure do. And like, let's not forget, it's not just like, oh, in this instance, you're going to genocide. It is what we call a doctrine, right? Like, so in certain things, we have doctrines for warfare kind of thing. We have various doctrines that we have, like modern warfare doctrines. Like, they will be ways that we conduct ourselves in warfare in certain areas, like, and those doctrines will control how the generals, let's say, should conduct themselves. And a lot of the doctrines sort of are pronouncements about how it's going to go. Now, if you're looking for the doctrine that they had, we've got to go to Deuteronomy 20. Right? So this is Deuteronomy 20. When you go against war, your enemies, and see horses and chariots and an army greater than yours, do not be afraid of them. Yeah, don't be afraid of them. Only God can be afraid of iron chariots. The officers shall say to the army. So basically it even gives like how their officers are going to rile them up. But it's more 10 onwards that we really want to pay attention to. When you march up to attack a city, make its people an offer of peace. If they accept and open their gates, all the people in it shall be subject to forced labor and shall work for you. So basically what that's saying is, if you go up to a city and say, hey guys, surrender, right? Everyone will be spared. They'll just be slaves to you. Easy. That's the easy option. If they refuse to make peace and engage you in battle, lay siege to that city. Right? So it's not like attack into it, not like storm the walls. It's, besiege, lay, surround it. Don't allow them to have food or water or what have you. Like, just basically capture the city. When the Lord your God delivers it into your hand, put to the sword all men in it. All men. Right? So all men of a certain age, they will absolutely wipe out. As for the women, the children, the livestock, and everything else in the city, you may take these as plunder for yourselves. And that word in the original Bible is very specific. The spoils of war, right? Like, this is people as things you have captured. And in the later passages, it will go into, this is the plunder from the cities, and it will list people as plunder. This is goods that you have captured, because those goods are slaves. And you may use the plunder the Lord your God gives you from your enemies. This is how you are to treat all cities that are a distance to you and do not belong to the nations nearby. Right? However, and this is where it gets absolutely dark. So I should have done a trigger warning, because this is absolutely horrible. However, in the cities of the nations, the Lord your God is giving to you as an inheritance. Right? And this is the passage that you go, oh, that's why they're doing it. Right? This is why, because God is actually saying that all of these cities belongs to you. Do not leave alive anything that breathes. Completely destroy them. The Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, as the Lord your God has commanded to you. Otherwise they will teach you to follow all the detestable things they do in worshipping their gods, and you will sin against the Lord your God. Really? I'm sorry. The newborn babies in the city, they will teach you their evil ways, will they? I'm sorry, but that doesn't seem like, even if that was the case, and I don't, see why it would be, how is a newborn baby going to teach you the ways of their gods? Wild. Absolutely wild. And so when you lay siege to a city for a long time, fighting against it to capture it, do not destroy its trees by putting an axe to them. And the reason why isn't because of, because you don't want an ecological disaster on your hand. No, it's because you can eat their fruit. It's basically saying, you don't cut down the trees because that provides food for you. You don't care about them. Do not cut them down. Are the trees people that you should besiege them? Well, I still feel like are the civilians people that you should besiege. But hey, God doesn't seem to care much about that. However, you may cut down trees that you know are not fruit trees and use them to build siege works until the city at war with you falls. Just saying, like a lot of it is, hey, don't leave anybody alive because these are the nations that you're giving it as an inheritance. I find it hard to believe that the newborn babies, the children in pregnant mothers are going to teach you all the detestable things they do in worshipping their gods. I find that kind of hard to believe. Oh, whoa, we have a... Oh, thank you so much, Stop the Stupidity, and comes in from the top rope. Thank you so much, mate. That is awesome. Now I got to warm up my voice even more. Even more. You little rabbits out there, you do the best for me. I know. You try to take care of me. I try to take care of myself. I do try to take care of myself. But do take care of Stop Stupidity. You are just amazing. Look, I appreciate all your support. It's just incredible. When I started this thing, it was, a fun time doing debates, a microphone. I didn't really have a dream. I would say a microphone and a dream, but I didn't really have a dream at all, like that I would have, over 1,000 subscribers. It was just more, hey, let's just do this thing. It's kind of fun. I do like debate. I do have some kind of frigging bug around me at the moment. God damn it. Alright. That sucks. But yeah, absolutely. Who knew? Who knew? This is fantastic. Thank you so much. And that goes out to Right-Handed Sith Calder 1.0. Well, we got the original. It's the 1.0. Nice. 1 by land, 2 by sea. Anne Stevens, Shifty Eyes, Shady, Counter Apologetics. Wait, I know, isn't that what's his name? Nan or something? He hasn't been around for a while, actually. Nara? Was it Nara? Nara Counter Apologetics? I haven't seen that guy for ages, but hey, you got a membership. Well done. Say thanks to Stop the Stupidity. If only we could stop the Hey, we're trying. We're trying to stop the stupidity, right? Yeah, all of us together. We can do it. Carl Sterling. I'm not saying the numbers. I just like it. Why can't they say our names that we want instead of okay. I think it's because of people copying other people's names. Multi Jordan and Black for Dawn. Winners, chicken dinners. Enjoy your emotes and other benefits. So good to have you on board. Whoops, that's some different emojis there, but that's okay. Screw it. I'm going to put a Bigfoot Jesus at the end. Winners, chicken dinners, and also Bigfoot Jesus. There you go. Well done. Nice. Thank you so much, STS. These are for you. There you go. Now I'm just going to count them because they've been ripping me off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, okay, we got all 10. Look, I'm now paranoid. Like once we got, and I think it was Stop the Stupidity that sent in these memberships, and it basically he did 10 and there were 9 there. It had given a membership to an account that no longer existed. And that's just ridiculous. They seem to have fixed it though, which is good, because that is blatantly ripping off my man, and there is no way I'm going to stand for that. I'm sorry. There's no way I'm going to stand for that nonsense from Google. How dare you? How dare you? How dare you? There you go, Sith. You got a membership. Enjoy. Enjoy putting emotes to make fun of me. I'm all for it. Okay, so that's Deuteronomy 20. So don't forget that isn't a, hey, this is sort of what we did against the Canaanites. This is what we did against, this particular tribe. This is your doctrine for warfare when you come up against a city. And what it is, it's remarkably similar to the Mongol hordes. Right? I know that Christians will lose their minds if we start to compare the Israelites with the Mongol hordes, but it's remarkably similar. What they did was they came up against a city. If the city basically relented, opened its gates, and paid them a bribe, they would just go on their way. If they didn't, they would basically slaughter everybody in the city. Right? Like that was the Mongol way. Now, the worst part about this is they didn't stop at, the Israelites didn't stop at, well, they give us money to go away, we go away. They were like, no, enslave that city. Completely enslave it. Pretty wild there. Pretty wild. But not the cities near them. Not the cities near them. They would, which is kind of stupid. To be honest with you, it's kind of stupid.
God seems to have his mind made up in the Old Testament. How do we put the actions of God in the Old Testament together with a God incarnate of the New Testament? A God of love, a God of peace, a God of healing, and turning the other cheek. And so my question for you is, from the Old Testament to the New Testament, has God changed his mind about justice here on earth?
Well, you would think so. You would think so. I think that the God in the Old Testament is vastly different than the figure of Jesus as a character outlined in the New. If somebody wrote 2 books, like as a fiction, right? Like the Bible is fiction, sure, but I mean in modern fiction, if somebody wrote, what's a good series? A Song of Ice and Fire, right? If J.R. Martin sat down and wrote A Song of Ice and Fire and had, Jon Snow in one as this angry dude, and then the next one as this compassion, all-loving guy, that would be, you would say that's a continuity error, right? You would say, hey, that there's no progression on this character, and the flip is kind of weird. Right, like there is no progression to leading up to this. There's no character development. It's just God is an angry and vengeful God, and even Jesus, when talking about God, he's kind of like, yes, it's an angry and vengeful God, but he loves you, like a abusive parent kind of thing. Sure, he'll cast you down and do horrible things to you, but he still loves you at the end of the day. So, there's no real way, I think, to square those two away being the same entity, the same being. I don't think there's a way to square that away. I think that sort of the trendy thing is, oh, well, Jesus is a different person and he's got a different take on things, basically. Throughout the Old Testament, the whole thing is do not defy the Lord your Father kind of thing. Don't if you do, you are in trouble. And then the new one is, well, defy all you want, but accept Jesus into your heart and you'll be forgiven. It's two completely different messages. The apologetics of how they square it away is incredible. Like, it's just incredible.
Let me try and unpack that a little bit. You quoted Psalm 109. That isn't God speaking.
Well, I would argue that the entire Bible isn't God speaking, right? Someone wrote it down, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't God. Right? Like, unless you're actually claiming that God came down and put pen to paper, he wasn't the one that wrote it down. Okay, so all of this stuff with, he is the Lord thy God, and all the 10 Commandments or something, I don't think that was God either. Because the 10 Commandments, God didn't, as far as I know, God didn't come and write them down. But this in particular is, and I'll sort of get to why this is a problem. It's the psalmist speaking. So he's not wrong, okay? The psalms in particular are supposed to be poetry articulating the anger at being exiled from Israel, right? Exiled from the ancient lands of Canaan. That is what it is. But having said that, I have a major objection.
That is the psalmist speaking. Now, when we come to the Bible, there's an interesting thing. Not everything recorded in the Bible is true,
Okay. So here, I want to stop it here because this is very telling. Look at this. Not everything... hang on a second.
The Bible, there's an interesting thing. Not everything recorded in the Bible.
Not everything recorded in the Bible is true. Okay, so that begs the question, how do you tell what is true and what is not true? Right? Like, do you have a methodology? And by methodology, when we're talking in sort of, scientific terms, which they may object to me putting over, but it is a valid word for it. What process or procedure do you have for telling what is true and what is not true? Right? Because we can go back and sort of look at scribal errors, and we can look at the way the language is, and, sort of biblical scholars like Dr. Kipp, like, Bart Ehrman, Richard Carrier, all of these very, very, very smart people, a lot smarter than me, can go back and look and see, was this written at the time? Was that, the accurate translations? Were they things that were generated at the time? Sure, they can do all of that. But what they can't tell is whether the people on that day just made it up or not. Whether it's not true and they just put it in there. Right? Because we can tell sort of about when something was written. We can tell from, certain clues whether it was a person of that area, depending on the language they used and all of that kind of stuff. Sure, I get that. But if you're saying, hey, some of it, the authors just wrote down and it was not true. Well, what's your process for determining when they made stuff up or they were being hyperbolic, right? Because if you start to open that door and sort of say, well, some of the stuff written in there didn't actually happen. The sun didn't really stand still in the sky while that battle waged on. Well, it sort of undermines all of the other stuff that's in there, right? Like, did God actually cure a person of their leprosy? Or is that just another metaphor? Did he metaphorically cure him of leprosy? Like, it opens up a very serious door about how you are actually evaluating what is metaphor and what is actually true. Right? And I've heard this leverage towards the slaughter of the Amalekites, which we're going to talk about, and the slaughter of the Canaanites. We're going to talk about that. But I've heard that leverage, it didn't really happen. It just is, a story that they made up of the Bible. And it's like, well, how do you know that all of them weren't stories made up? Was the plagues of Egypt just a story they made up? Once you get to the bottom of it, you sort of have to go, did anything supernatural happen at all? Or is this just a story they made up? Like, all of it. We don't have a process for telling what is true and what is not true. And that's the problem. If you want to claim, oh, well, the Psalms, they weren't true. Yes, okay, they're more recorded as poetry. But, you know, when you have a doctrine laid down, right? Like in Deuteronomy that I showed you, where they basically say, hey, enslave the city. If they resist, kill everybody in it. Everybody. Right? Except for the women that you take as plunder for yourselves. And if that's one of the cities near you, don't stop there. Destroy everything that breathes. If you're going to say, well, it wasn't true that they handed out that doctrine, then they've got a really weird way of recording it. You know, this is what you are to do when you go into a city. Now, I grant that Psalms, where it's written as, oh, blessed is he who does this, and Deuteronomy, where it says, hey, this is what is required of you as a Israelite under the Lord your God. They're two different things. I get you. But you've got to square that away with, you know, Deuteronomy and stuff.
Bible is true, is it, or good?
Or good. So Deuteronomy is supposed to be a direct commandment from God. It's Deuteronomy 20 is, you know, when you go to war against your enemies. Wow.
We're told a story of David committing adultery. And God later disapproves of it. And I think we've got to open our minds, as C.S. Lewis pointed out.
Yeah, I don't hold C.S. Lewis very highly. I think he was a better author than he was an apologist. And even then, he wasn't that great. You know, as an author, C.S. Lewis was always overshadowed by J.R.R. Tolkien. He always was. He never became the author that he wanted to, because Tolkien was so much better than he was. I mean, if you read the Chronicles of Narnia and can stomach the horrendous sort of Christianity analogies scattered all through it, and the, you know, sort of stuff like that, it's decent. It's a good book. It's not fantastic. It's not fantastic. And he was an even worse apologist, quite frankly.
I think, to the idea that in some of the Psalms there is a record of what certain people thought, but it's not necessarily a reflection of the attitude of God. And you can understand somebody who's suffered terribly, people do, as you know, you hear them all the time, wishing all kinds of vengeance on their enemies.
Yeah, so this is the point of Psalms, and it's the point that I made. He's not wrong, okay? He's not wrong that Psalms is a book of... It's an expression of lament. It's an expression of a people that has had horrible wrongs done to them. And it is more those wishful thinking. Yeah, and Tommy's preempted me. Then why are they in the Bible? Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So that is the point, Tommy. Okay, God didn't write it, but he's certainly the editor. Okay, he certainly would determine what makes it into the Bible, what's important and what's not. And that is my point. If you have an omniscient, omnipotent God who wants to present a book of a moral book, the good book apparently, the way that people should live and sort of record it all, then you would drop this off the final draft. Okay? You would not have this in it. So God may not have written the Psalms, but he definitely was the final approval for them to go into the Bible. So you've got to ask why. And it makes a lot more sense that it is a compilation of the texts of a people that went through a lot, that worshipped a god, that went through some horrible times, that wished ill upon their enemies, than the moral book of wisdom from an omnipotent, omniscient deity. Okay, because you don't see that in it. A lot of his things are very short-sighted. It's interesting in Deuteronomy, he says, don't cut down the fruit trees because, that can cause problems when you have to eat. It's really weird because he doesn't seem to, give a lot of thought to other people. And, hey, if the Lord because don't forget in the New Testament, it's don't kill anybody. Tell them the good news. I think that would have worked a lot better for the ancient Israelites, right? Like being modern Christianity and saying, hey, our God in fact loves you, values you, and come on board, we will treat you like a brother. That would have done really well in the ancient times. It would have. But apparently God didn't know that at the time. I posit that it was the people that didn't know that at the time.
So I would give God the benefit of the doubt there and say these are recorded and I believe they're inspired.
Okay, so here's the thing. Why would an omniscient God need the benefit of the doubt? Right? Like, this is the thing. Like, you give people the benefit of the doubt because they are imperfect and so are you. Right? The benefit of the doubt is sort of, it's given to people to say, hey, like, I'm going to assume you didn't mean that, or, something was confused or something like that. I don't know why an omniscient, omnipotent God would ever need the benefit of the doubt. That God should know the optimal way to convey exactly what he means. And the fact that it doesn't happen and it's so confused, it doesn't speak to a divine text. It speaks to a human text. Because a divine text would be absolutely clear, unable to be misinterpreted, unable to be misread in any way. It would be absolutely clear. If God was perfect, how could a perfect being produce an imperfect book? That's what I don't understand, right? Like, that is what I don't understand. And they're sort of going, oh, well, the book's not perfect, but God is. Well, if he can't write a decent book, he's not perfect. I don't understand. Maybe someone can explain it to me. Like, even if you're saying, oh, well, he inspired the book. Wouldn't an omniscient God know that that is going to cause all kinds of trouble down the line? Like, wouldn't he know that if he doesn't make the book clear, it's going to cause wars and destruction? Because I could tell you that. And I'm pretty sure they're advocating that God knows more than me. So I don't understand it. I really don't.
But they're not necessarily attitudes that, oh, well, that's the right attitude because it's in that psalm. I think they're there for us to see that here are people who are genuine people, who have a whole range of emotions. Some of them are very good and some of them are very suspect, and we've got to learn to deal with them. The much more weighty issue for me is your...
Well, I do agree with that. I do agree. I absolutely agree with that. We have a range of emotions and we've got to learn to manage them in a productive way. And, I think that I don't disagree with him on this. But it seems to me that a lot of Christianity is not dealing with them in a certain way. Right? So what we know, and not from Christianity, what we know from psychology is that if you do try to, like, you've got to experience emotions. You have got to say and acknowledge them and accept them as they are without them controlling you. So, for instance, my doctor didn't make our appointment, didn't call me back, left me hanging. I'm angry about that, right? That makes me mad. I'm very I am pissed off about that. As we would say in Australia, a benefit of that. Look, we all know I've got an accent. You can point it out, okay? I will happily say yes, I've got an accent. Sure. Apparently the Australian accent is sexy. I have yet to see evidence of this. I am a sexy Australian accent atheist. I'm sorry. I don't see evidence of this thing at all. So I have yet to see the evidence of this. But as we'd say in Australia, I was ropeable, right? And so what we know is that any suppression of these, if you go, nah, it's okay, I'm not really angry, I'm gonna push that down because, you know, I'm not gonna be angry at that. The way that they come back up is problematic, right? They cause massive problems. If you try to push it down and not experience it, it will come back with more force, because the way that your neurology, your psychology, and your body work, it wants you to acknowledge, it wants you to feel that. And the best way to deal with it is to accept it and, you know, channel it into something healthy. Okay, it's channel it into something that is positive. Channel it, you know, like accept it, feel it, experience it, and it's okay, right? It's okay to be really angry, but it's not okay to do certain things because of that anger or let it control you. You know, let it determine how you behave. But you've got to acknowledge that that feeling is there. I think that a lot of the problems with toxic masculinity in our society at the moment is men who cannot admit that they are afraid. Right? I mean, these people are so scared, yet will pretend they are the bravest, most courageous people. If you're not afraid of anything in this world, then you're not paying attention. That's my opinion. If something doesn't scare you, then you haven't you haven't looked at the world. But that doesn't mean we, you know, have fear and then hide under our blanket for the rest of our lives. No. It's okay to be scared. But what we want to do is experience it and then do something that is constructive with it and not destructive. And so if all you're doing is going, no, I'm not afraid of anything, mate, nothing scares me, that fear's going to come back twice as hard because it wants you to acknowledge something. And I think that with everything happening in the world, like, I don't know who would say, hey, there's nothing in the world that scares them. Have you heard of prions? That shit be scary. Okay, so if you're unaware, and I'm sorry for having to reveal this to you, a prion is a misfolded protein. It's not even a bacteria or a virus or anything. It's a misfolded protein that will cause other proteins in the brain, if you do contract it through something like mad cow's disease or something, it will cause other proteins in your brain to misfold as well in a cascading effect and turn your brain into Swiss cheese. That's fucking scary. Okay? If you're not afraid of that, I don't know what's wrong with you. But what we don't do is just hide away from all this. You know, we deal with it, we accept it, we say, hey, that's scary, but let's live our life. Let's, you know, try and find a cure to this thing. We take comfort in the people around us. They're probably scared of things too. Hey, that's okay. It's okay. It's okay to be scared. It's okay. It's really okay. Also, the infection at Dead Island. Kaylee, it's been ages since I heard that game mentioned. Didn't that have just a baller trailer? I'm going on tangents in the chat. But yeah, it's okay, and I get that. So I do agree with Lennox here that, hey, we've got to experience this range of emotion, and sometimes the things that we do are not sort of, they're not optimal for what we want to have happen. But that's okay. Be kind to yourself and go, okay, well, I reacted in this way. How would a better way to react be? Okay, don't expect yourself to react perfectly, because we are, I think that sort of saying that we're a bunch of weasels in a trench coat is absolutely true. You may not react in the best way. That's okay. It's okay. Be kind to yourself. Say, hey, how do I react in a better way next time? How do I get through this without my fear making me make these decisions? It's okay. Don't be harsh on yourself, because we are just human.
Second point, because you mentioned the actual point where we know that God steps in. So can I take that point? Because
Oh, Kaylee, yeah, I do. Sorry, this is just for Kaylee. I did see a message saying you would like to join the member thing. I think you got a membership. I presume you just weren't around for it. I do them usually 2 weeks. I did a couple extra because I took a break from streaming, and so I felt I didn't feel guilty. I just felt like giving back. Maybe I did feel a little guilty, but yeah, I do the live streams where you can join every 2 weeks as a membership perk. Really love when people join. Usually Lil's on talking to me about American politics and stuff, which I always love. Just fantastic. So yeah, if you want to, usually they're Wednesday nights Eastern time or Thursday mornings real time, Australian time. Australia time. So yeah. Feel free to come along. If you're a member, it is a member stream. It is one of the benefits that I did not mention apart from the emojis. But yeah, always a good time. Always have fun. Usually I'm just playing something. Yeah, come along. Love to see you. I'm sorry you missed it. I would love to have you there.
I think it's the more substantive one. It comes up all the time that you have in Deuteronomy the command to go into.
Oh, Tommy, that is just a guilt spiral. Don't start the guilt spiral, mate. I know what you're up to. Cut that out. No, that's a guilt spiral. That's a guilt spiral. Stop it. Stop it, Tommy. No, that's what we do, right? We feel bad about feeling bad, and there's like your rational brain can say, hey, that is a stupid way to address how you feel, because all that will lead is you feel bad about feeling bad about feeling bad about feeling, you're just going to make yourself worse. But it's hard to break out of, right? We know that, hey, that's a really bad thing to do. It's easy to go, well, don't feel bad about feeling bad, because that's just a guilt spiral, right? You're just going to guilt yourself into a mess. But it's harder to just snap out of it, right? Harder to snap out.
Canaan to Joshua and wipe everybody out. You see. And people say, but this is ethnic cleansing, this is genocide.
Yes,
and this
it is.
God
yes.
behind it. Now,
and all of that is true, yes. It is ethnic cleansing, it's genocide, and the starting lines give a real indication of why they're not enslaving that city like they do the cities further out. In the lands of Canaan, they weren't to enslave the city, and that is because they were promised it as an inheritance. Right? They were promised this thing. And that's a very clear indication that they were going to take over the city that they recently evacuated. Let's put it that way. Right? Like, don't forget, they're not keeping the women, they're not keeping the children. Everything that breathes has to die, and that's because they're moving in. They are the new leaseholder of that particular city. Okay, it makes it very clear.
I take that very seriously, and my response very briefly is this. Number one, this event is described in a book
No, it's not an event. As I showed you in Deuteronomy 20, right, it is a doctrine. It is a war. It's a doctrine of warfare. When you go to war against your enemies, right, that's how the verse starts. When you march up to attack a city, make its people. Like, this is not a, oh, we documented what they did. No. This is a doctrine of warfare. This is what you are to do when you are going to war against people. This is not a recording of people's feelings. This is a doctrine of war that was applied by the Israelites.
Not an obscure book of the Bible, but a book that defines the very morality with which we criticize it.
Okay, well, I mean, I think it's a bit of a stretch to say that Deuteronomy defines morality. Deuteronomy is one of those ones where it has some pretty bad stuff in there. Some pretty bad stuff in there. Like, you can usually they go to Exodus for, morality, Exodus, the 10 Commandments kind of thing. Not a lot of Christians are turning to Deuteronomy for their moral sort of stuff. Maybe a bit on how you should treat the poor, help the poor kind of thing. Be honest kind of stuff, but not a lot of people are turning to Deuteronomy for that stuff, because it has some really horrible stuff in there.
That is very striking. The laws of humanitarian war, the first ones in history, are in the same book, Deuteronomy.
Is that true? Is that true? Because I don't know that it's humanitarian. Like, I remember reading that you shouldn't cut down fruit trees, but I don't see a lot of humanitarian war in kill the entire city of everything that breathes. I'm not sure that would have made it past the Geneva Convention, sir. What about all the people in there that hadn't really done anything wrong and didn't agree with their leaders? I think that part of the Geneva Convention and why we have the modern rules of warfare is because we understand that in any nation or any state, there will be a lot of people that do not agree with what their leaders are doing. In fact, they may be actively working against it however they can, right? Like, it's why we didn't go into Germany, say, and exterminate everybody. It's because a lot of Germans didn't like what their government was doing. They just didn't have the power to change that.
And as Lord Sachs, our former chief rabbi, pointed out, he said they're very humanitarian. Spare the women and children, spare the trees.
No, not in the Canaanite city. So do you notice the way that Lennox has gone from the complete wipeout of all people, everything that breathes? So I wanna really hammer on this. Okay, I want to really hammer on this. Where is it? So that whoever in the cities of the nations the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, do not leave alive anything that breathes. Right? Completely destroy them. Anything that breathes. Do 2-month-old babies breathe? Yes, they do, John. Yes, they do. He was commanding them to wipe out all living things in that city. So to them it wasn't spare the women, and it wasn't, and I want to show you this as well. It wasn't spare the women like because they have to have more babies to get on with their lives. So this is when, if they refuse to make peace, they engage you in battle, wage siege. When the Lord your God delivers into your hand, you shall put to the sword all men in it. As for the women, children, the livestock, and everything else in the city, you may take these as plunder for yourselves. Like, I don't know what rules of I don't know if John has read the Geneva Convention, like the laws we have about humanitarian warfare, but it does not include taking people as plunder. You know, the women, the children, the lives, like just taking whatever they have, including people, as slaves. That is what happened. We know this from the history of the area. Like, they would go in, if they resisted, they would kill all the men and take all the women as slaves. You know, so I sort of saying, hey, they're the first rules of humanitarian warfare. Wow. You don't seem to understand what humanitarian warfare is. What happened at Hiroshima, a travesty. An absolute travesty. The first use of nuclear weapons on the planet, and the last use of nuclear weapons in warfare on the planet, for good reason. Absolutely horrible. Absolutely horrible.
And so on. Seek peace before you do war.
But what you've got to, like, you know that people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, some survived, right? It wasn't like, you know, go in and kill all of them, like every single person. Some survived. Now, I'm not 100% convinced of the rationale they used to drop the bombs. So the rationale that is presented is that the Japanese were so honor-bound and loyal to the emperor that they would not stop fighting until they were all dead, basically, because surrender was dishonorable. That was part of the rationale, that it would have been more costly in American lives to have to invade mainland Japan, take it, you know, city by city, village by village from the Japanese, and they still wouldn't surrender, that it would sort of take so much resources, so much human life, that dropping the bomb was a better solution. The other rationale was that the Japanese people were on the brink of starvation, right? So the problem was that they had so exhausted their resources, and the government was basically diverting all food to the military, that the Japanese people were just about to starve to death by the millions. So dropping the bombs was basically, well, if we can end this war decisively without this long drawn out invasion that would have lasted years and years, we can get food to the Japanese, kind of thing. Now, I'm not 100% on board with that. I understand the rationale. I think that a demonstration of the bomb on a non-populated area would have convinced them to surrender. But, you know, we don't know for sure. We don't know for sure, right? Like, it was true. If the war had dragged out for some more years, the Japanese population would have had millions dead in starvation. Starvation is one of the things that in war, it always extracts a horrendous count. Now, their rationale for dropping two bombs was drop one on Nagasaki and one on Hiroshima, once so they could demonstrate that they could wipe out their entire population, another one to show that they could do it again. Now, I'm not sure I agree with that. I think that if you demonstrate that power to the emperor and the generals, kind of thing, and say, hey, we're going to do this to a city next time, I think they would have surrendered. I don't think they were suicidal. I think that the troops were honor bound to die for their emperor, but I don't think the leaders were that suicidal. I think that they would have surrendered. But we don't have, with history always, we don't have a context for, what would have happened if something else happened, kind of thing. We don't have that. Unfortunately, we can't tell what would have happened. But it doesn't make it right automatically. And the problem with that sort of, but Nagasaki and Hiroshima, just because somebody did something wrong doesn't make somebody else right in what the atrocity they've committed. Just because, someone dropped a nuke on Nagasaki doesn't make the invasion of Ukraine right or wrong. It's independent. Like, just because someone did something horrendously wrong is independent from what somebody else is doing, because there are other factors at play. So I disagree. If I could stop it, I probably wouldn't drop the bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Now, if the Japanese people really started to starve, that may be the best thing to do. I'm not sure. We would have to see what happened. I think a demonstration to the leadership of Japan at, hey, we can explode this sun on your cities, would have been enough. But I don't know that for sure. I think I would have held off, though. Somebody said something that I did want to address as well. Somebody said thank you for the... Okay, so the membership was from Stop the Stupidity, a goal that we could all aspire to, and Stevens. So that was from Stop the Stupidity. So yeah, absolutely, big thank you to Stop the Stupidity. Always generous. Just a friggin' champion down here. Just a dead set legend, mate. Just a dead set legend.
They're all in the very book that describes this event. So the first thing you're faced with is this must be extremely unusual.
No. Lennox is completely wrong here, okay? Because it isn't this is what happened. This is a commandment in Deuteronomy 20 saying this is what you are to do if they do not surrender. Okay, it's not hey, we're recording this unusual event. This is standard doctrine that it's laying down in Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy is the book that goes through sort of how you are to live to day, right? Like, the things in Deuteronomy are kind of, well, you'll have fair courts and you'll have, here's what you wear when you're in the temple. It's got a lot of just minute stuff in it. Right? So this isn't hey, this is what happened. This is you are to do this when this event occurs. Let me grab Deuteronomy and I'll show you what I mean. So it sort of starts sort of learn to follow these pronouncements kind of thing, right? And it goes into like a lot of prosperity, sort of, but this is what I'm talking about. It's sort of, if you pay attention to these laws and are careful to follow them, the Lord your God will keep covenant of love with you, kind of thing. It sort of goes on a lot about how these are the things you are to do if you want God to play friendly with you, essentially. Observe the commands your Lord, and it goes on a lot like this. And sort of, if you don't follow them, punish you. Punishment will follow. Remember this and never forget how you arouse the anger of the Lord your God. I'm not sure how that squares with the God of peace kind of thing. But I just want to get into Deuteronomy. And this is a telling of the Ten Commandments kind of thing. Observe therefore all the commands I'm giving you today. Observe all commands. That's yeah. You must not worship the Lord your God in their way. You are to seek the Lord of God, choose from among your tribe, name there for his dwelling. To that place you must... Right, it's got a lot of minutiae. You may slaughter your animals in any of your towns and eat as much of the meat you want, as if it were gazelle or deer, according to the best blessing the Lord gives you. But ceremonially unclean, and the clean may eat it. But you must not eat the blood, pour it out on the ground like water. You must not eat in your own towns, tithe of new... So it goes through a lot of just these day-to-day sort of minutiae and laws of, present your burnt offerings on the altar kind of thing. It's not this, well, we're recording what happened in the past. It's a lot of, this is the way you are to live. And 20 deals with, what do you do if you're, declared war on somebody and you come across their city? Well, if they surrender, you're to enslave them. If they don't surrender, if they're far away from your lands, you put all the men to the sword, and then you take all of the women and children and livestock and possessions for yourself, for your own tribe. If they are in the lands of Canaan, you kill everybody and then take possession of their city, because that's your inheritance. I'm not sure. I don't know what definition of humanitarian law that falls under, according to John Lennox. But the fact that he says that is the origin of humanitarian law is scary.
That's the first point. The second point is that the reason given in Deuteronomy for that invasion of Canaan is moral.
Well, no. No, it's not. The reason given is that the land of, is your inheritance, and it justifies the killing of everybody by saying, hey, you don't want these people teaching you how to worship their gods. But there's a number of questions, like, how is a newborn baby going to teach you how to worship its gods?
It's because of the extreme wickedness, and it involved some of the worst excesses of child sacrifice that the world has ever seen. And in fact, the bigger biblical picture is, as it puts it, that God waited for 400 years. And waited and waited and waited, and he allowed that entry into the land of Canaan to coincide with the zenith of that wickedness and judged it.
Well, actually, there's a lot of criticism about the Israelites, that the passages in which it sort of says you have to give your firstborn child to Yahweh, that is the child sacrifice that they're talking about. That the way historians have looked at this is that the Canaanites, they weren't that much different from one another, right? Like the Amalekites and the Israelites, they weren't that different from one another. They had the same cultural practices, they had the same, sort of architecture, they had the sort of, much they did was the same. But what they did have is different gods for different city-states. So just like the ancient Greeks, you might have Athene as being the patron deity of Athens, for instance. But the Spartans, they worshipped Ares, the god of war. So you had these different gods for different city-states. And Yahweh was just one of them. And we know Yahweh was part of a pantheon. El was the primary chief god. Yahweh was a son. Baal was another son. Now, there was a what we thought was a god called Moloch, and child sacrifice seemed to be associated with Moloch. But it seems that Moloch is very, very possibly, and a lot of historians lean this way, to be a practice rather than a god itself. That Moloch was associated with the Phoenician sort of traditions, and we know that they did child sacrifice there. The Phoenicians that later became sort of Carthage. So, I think especially from the story of the binding of Isaac, where Abraham went up to sacrifice his firstborn Isaac to Yahweh, it wasn't something that, oh, the Israelites weren't doing this. No. No.
Gets to the heart of the issue. Many people conclude that God is morally evil. They hear that God judged the Canaanites, including women and children, and they assume God was killing innocent people. But that's a huge assumption. Were the Canaanites actually innocent? That's the question we have to answer.
Okay, so this is the weird apologetic where you get into, like, what is wrong with you? Like, how could a 2-year-old child not be innocent? You know, okay, even if I grant that every single adult was eliminating children, right? Like, just say every single one was, which I find to be unlikely and a bit ridiculous, but let's just for the sake of argument say that was happening. How is, like, a 2-year-old child guilty of that as well? Like, what are we talking about here? Like, it says to eliminate in the city everything that breathes. That includes, like, a 6-month-old infant. Like, what are we talking about here? That somehow that baby was, you know, guilty of some travesty? Like, this is the weird sort of mental gymnastics you've got to put yourself through if you want to say, hey, those people, and there's a reason why we don't go, oh, well, that state is doing X, we're going to find all of the people in it guilty of it. Because a lot of the time, the people don't have a lot of sway, especially in those days where you had kings of Canaan, you know, people that ruled authoritarian. We don't just go, oh, well, the people were hell on board. That may not be the case. You know, we don't just go, well, Iran's got a horrible theocratic, not totalitarian, but a sort of, you know, despotic sort of theocratic government. Let's blame the people. Because the people aren't that crazy about it either. Like, that's why we don't do that. So I don't know what messed up idea of humanitarian these people have, but it's some weird version of humanitarian that, you know, condones killing infants because their parents were doing something bad. And the other thing is, he's basically going, because they were unaliving children through these practices, let's go into the city and unalive all the children. I'm sorry, what? How does that make any sense? That's like saying, you know, a cop saying, oh, that criminal charged at me. In order to stop him from killing my partner, I shot my partner. Problem solved. Problem solved. What? Like, this is the weird stuff. You have, oh, well, they were doing child exterminating, so we went in and exterminated all the children. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Before we can see whether God acted unjustly, the Old Testament presents a very different picture. It describes Canaanite society as being marked by persistent and extreme moral corruption. Among the practices repeatedly condemned were ritual prostitution, incest, bestiality, and the sacrifice of children to false gods such as Molech.
Yeah, so Molech probably, or I'm not sure of what the consensus is, but I know that it probably wasn't a god. Moloch was the practice of sacrificing children, right? Like, and we find this word traced back to Phoenicia, which of course is in northern Africa at the time, like far North Africa on the Mediterranean. So, and the Phoenicians got around a lot. They were the traders of their time. They were the naval giant at the time. They would have gotten to Canaan, the lands of Canaan. So we don't think this was an actual god. There's no history of it in the Canaanite pantheon. If you want to argue Baal was a Canaanite god, sure. Moloch, not so much.
These were not isolated acts, but deeply rooted religious practices in which children were offered as burnt sacrifices. Scripture also tells us that God delayed judgment for over 400 years, showing remarkable patience before finally bringing justice.
Well, it doesn't say that. So it doesn't say that it brought, it doesn't say that he brought judgment for their child sacrifice, right? The example that it gives is because they worship or they practice for different gods, that they worship other gods and worship in the wrong way, right? Like they worship a way that we don't like. Okay, none of it says, hey, they do these things, as far as I'm aware. But even if they did, slaughtering them all and genociding them all isn't the solution I would expect from an omnipotent, omniscient God. That's stupid. Like, I would understand if it said, hey, go in, take out their leaders and explain to the rest of them that how they're harming themselves. I get you. But this? Oh, I'm going to stop you from ending babies by ending the babies. What is wrong with these people?
And the standard was impartial. And here's what's often overlooked. God warned Israel that if they embraced the same wickedness, they would receive the same judgment. And they eventually did. The point is that God was not arbitrarily targeting one group of people. He was judging persistent, unrepentant evil wherever it was found. I think one of the reasons this passage...
No, he wasn't. Let's face it, like all of the sort of fathers of the religion, like Abraham did some horrendous things. So did like a lot of his progeny. Like you even said yourself that David was a terrible person. He didn't punish immorality wherever he found it. He punished it when you weren't doing what he wanted. Like, let's be clear about this. It isn't like, oh, well, if God's chosen does something wrong, he's going to punish him severely. Get out of here, man. Seriously?
Is so difficult for many people is because they instinctively assume that people are basically good. But the Bible doesn't begin there. It teaches that all humanity...
Well, so is there inherent good to people? I don't think that humans are inherently good or inherently evil. I think that humans are inherently amoral. That there is no... I think that all humans are capable of great good and just horrific harm, depending on the circumstances they're put in and what they're trying to do. I think that all humans are capable of that. That's why we have to study what makes humans tick, and it's not a god, right? It's not he wrote something on my heart, that isn't what we should be doing. But we should understand that under certain circumstances, humans will do exceptional things, whether they are good or bad. And that, yes, you too are capable of being a horrendous monster. So you've got to use critical thinking, you've got to use compassion, you've got to, what I was talking about earlier, when you are angry, you've got to acknowledge that feeling, but try to channel it into something that is non-destructive, something good. And when you're completely in love with someone, for instance, it's a good emotion, but you've got to acknowledge it and channel it into something good, not something harmful. So yeah, you may be in love. I'm not going to tell anybody when they're not, but you want to, go about it the right way and not stalk somebody, right? So the emotions themselves aren't good or bad. So inherently humans aren't good or bad, right? So if somebody has an emotion, like for instance, if they're angry, that emotion is never wrong. It's never like, oh, well, that is bad. Okay, we don't look at it like that. Emotions are simply telling us something about ourselves. There is no oh, well, that anger is true. It doesn't apply. What you do with it may be right or wrong, but the emotion itself isn't. Or the reason why you're feeling it may be right or wrong, right? Like you think your wife has cheated on you, right? Like your anger that comes up, that isn't right or wrong. It isn't true or false. It is just a reaction. Now, the reason, like if you're completely wrong about your wife cheating on you, then yeah, that may be wrong. That may be untrue. But the emotion isn't true or false. It isn't right or wrong. It just is something that comes up, and it should tell you something about yourself and the way, like, because it doesn't tell you anything about the world around you. Okay, it doesn't tell you, like, just because you're righteously angry doesn't tell you whether your wife has cheated on you or not, right? Like, it has no bearing on it whatsoever. So we want to, use that and acknowledge it, and then listen to what it tells us and go to that mature adult to go, well, how can I use this? What can I do with this that is productive for myself? So I'll give you an example. One way is you can go, just scream at your wife and accuse her of all kinds of things with no evidence. Probably not going to turn out for the best. Or you can sit down and you can say, hey, I've had this anger come up. I'm scared. I don't know why it's come up, but obviously something about the relationship I'm not happy with, and this has brought this up. And then you can talk about it and talk about why you're angry or why you're afraid, and that will be a lot more productive than the other way round, right? Like that's the things that we've got to learn how to do, because humans, we can be simple creatures. We don't do that inherently, right? It's so much easier to lose it completely and yell at somebody than it is to sit down and say, hey, and be vulnerable and say, hey, I'm angry about this, and I don't, I want to talk to you about it because I don't know what to do with it, because it concerns me.
Stands guilty before a holy God because we have all sinned against him. And the truth is, if he allows people to live even one more day, that is mercy.
Wow. So God, the mafioso Don, if he allows you to live one more day, he's shown you mercy. God is a loving God. He shows you mercy by allowing you to live a single more day. Don't you feel blessed that God hasn't destroyed and killed you for no reason whatsoever? How blessed do you feel? Wow, okay, that's some really screwed up stuff, right? That is some absolutely... Because once you start to, get people to think, oh, I'm doing the will of God, they start to think, oh, it's a mercy if I let you live, because that's God's mercy. Christian morality, ladies and gentlemen. Christian morality. Why won't you let me live? I've decided not to be merciful today. Holy crap.
If he takes life...
Can I just also say that will... if God lets you live another day, it's a mercy, then let's translate that a different way. You deserve to die, is what he's saying. I'm not saying that. I think you deserve to live, and I think you deserve to live a happy and fulfilled life, which will, share that happiness among everybody and be truly content. That's what I think. That's what I think you deserve as a human being. He's just said, you deserve to die. This is what makes me worry about this type of Christianity. Because if people start thinking others deserve to die, I can't imagine that they do something wrong. Well, you're going to get what you deserve. Holy crap, this is terrible.
That is justice. But that still leaves one huge question. Why do so many people think the God of the Old Testament is different from the God of the New Testament?
The next point is that God told Israel if they behave the same way, they'd receive the same punishment. So this isn't a question of an arrogant nation coming in to ethnically cleanse. They're told you must deal with that because it's morally evil. But if
No. Look, so the whole idea about moral corruption gives you a lot of power over the population, right? Like it sort of says, well, if you don't worship the right way, if you don't follow these commandments from God, if you don't do what, because this gives the priesthood, which is, don't forget, the priesthood is the Aaron and Moses, incredible control over their people, right? Like, so if you think your entire people is going to be wiped out if you don't do what the priests say, that gives them incredible control over their people. So yeah, it makes sense that they turn around and go, hey, well, if you burn strange incense, which was Aaron's sons burnt strange incense, that they're going to be killed. Or if you just leave it, the entire people are going to be killed. This is North Korea stuff, right? People will, you know, offer up their loved ones to the government, because if they don't, everybody's gonna get it. Gives you incredible control over them.
You compromise with the same thing, you're going to get the same punishment. And that actually happened. So that what it then resolves itself to, and now I'm indebted to the scholars, like Nicholas.
I don't know, like I'd love for him to sort of more articulate when did it happen to them? You know, sort of when did they get wiped out completely? Because he's sort of, I'm not sure if this is the person that did this video, which is the guy in the bottom right, or him himself, but, you know, the entire tribe of Israel being destroyed didn't happen. So I'm not sure if this is about something else, but that didn't happen, sir.
Wolferstorf here, and is he in Harvard, I think, or Yale, who studied this in detail. There's a big conference on this just recently. All this business to kill them all, and it's repeated. And he points out that it's repeated so often that it must be an ancient formulaic. Now, if I said to you, all England came to the funeral of Princess Diana, well, some people were in bed with flu, you know, and the whole, but we know what it means, a substantial quantity. And Wolfersdorf's conclusion, as one of the world's leading biblical scholars, is that what this means is score a decisive victory over. And the reason it's in one of the most moral books of the Old Testament is that the rules of war contained in that book were not actually broken.
Yeah, I think that is a bit of a dodge there. So yes, it may have said kill everything that breathes, like, you know, means destroy them completely, but that's still an outrageous thing that we would find horrendous to do. You know, a certain nation in the Middle East at the moment, I'm talking to you, that's still something that is atrocious by any standard today. And if the God knew that it's atrocious, why did he command it? Because, you know, you may say, hey, they didn't take it literally, but I don't think he knows that for sure. And the fact that that's what he commanded is a problem, right? Because you don't, like, you want to say, hey, the Bible is an accurate record of God's pronouncements, but you're saying, but don't take this one seriously because God didn't mean it. Even if the people didn't do it, that is what God wrote. It's this real dodge where he's saying, oh, he didn't mean it like that. Really? One is, if the people surrender to you when you go for a city, enslave them. If not, you are to put all the men to the sword and take the women and children as your possessions. And if they are in the lands of Canaan, you are to kill everything in the city. Even if it's like not everything, it's still freaking terrible. Like, this is sort of this real moving of the goalposts where he's sort of saying, well, he didn't mean everybody. Obviously, he would have let, you know, everybody under the age of 5 live. Is that better? It's not much better. Sure, it's better, but not much. Like, it's still horrendous. So this sort of apologetic is like, oh yeah, but it was bad, but not that bad. It's supposed to be a perfectly moral God. It shouldn't be bad at all.
Because if you ask yourself the question, were all these cities wiped out? The answer is no, because they all reappear again. populated. So
Okay, but this was the one in Deuteronomy 20 is not a recording of what they did, right? Like it wasn't a recording of, hey, these people went in, and it is a pronouncement to do it in Deuteronomy. This is how you deal with a city that will not surrender.
it wasn't carried out in the literalistic sense. And so for all of those reasons, I think we're beginning to get a picture that changes. And also,
So the people who wrote the Bible made stuff up. They made crap up. Yeah, this is one of the few things I will agree with this man on. Yes, the people who wrote the Bible just made stuff up. Yes, correct. I get you.
idea that the God of the Old Testament is an angry God, the God of the New is a God of love. Not so. The God is a God of mercy, long-suffering. All of that is from the Old Testament, not from the New. So I think there are ways of approaching that, but they leave a huge question. And the huge question is, and this is what we don't like the concept of judgment. We like it even less if human agency is involved, like Joshua to judge a tribe, but we don't like it. People were killed. But as I said before, there are many innocent people will die before the end of our session.
Wow. Well, you heard him, folks. Many people will die by the end of our session, so it's fine to go out and murder people. Hey, John Lennox, mathematician extraordinaire. I cannot believe how bad this apologetic is. Right? Like, oh, people are dying in Africa of starvation, so I should be able to starve my kid. Right? Think about this apologetic. He's saying, hey, people die naturally, so what these people did to take their lives prematurely is perfectly acceptable. It's perfectly moral. That is horrendous. Like, that is a monstrous thing to say. Is there any case where you would make that argument? That because people are dying anyway, a premature end to their lives is not necessarily immoral? Like, this is absolutely bonkers. You know, like, it is bonkers.
So we've got to face then this, and it is really that final question, that question of judgment and justice. And you see, this is a very important part of my Christianity. Dawkins, in that quote, I didn't quote it all for sake of time, he says the world has no justice.
Yeah, so that is not what Dawkins said. As much as I disagree with Dawkins on certain things, he said that the world has no inherent justice, right? Like, that it doesn't have a natural justice that comes about. And anybody studying evolution would kind of see this, right? Like, there isn't a, divine being that comes down to the lion and says, how dare you take those zebras? That's, immoral kind of thing, and you're up for it, mate. Here, I'm gonna take that. That isn't sort of something that we see in nature, right? Like, if one dog sort of betrays another dog and, attacks him and drives him out of the pack, there's no sense of, divine justice going to come down and, protect the one dog and sort of go, no, you've got to not betray your fellow dogs. Or, that's what he's sort of saying. But that's why justice is so important as a human concept for maintaining social balance, like maintaining this sort of society that we have. Because we all have a sense, or almost all of us have a sense of empathy and a sense of reciprocity, right? The empathy being you understand how other people feel and you think that people should be treated equally, right? These two basic senses. So justice is incredibly important because it's not found in nature, because there's no, God's going to fix everything in the end, then why bother doing anything right now? Like, aren't you just tidying the room before the maid comes in? I've never understood this argument that, because God has final justice, justice doesn't mean anything anymore. Well, I think it's the other way round. I think that if ultimate justice exists, then why are we trying to do a fleshly or a physical justice on this earth. Actually, I like that analogy. It's like cleaning up your hotel room before the maid gets there. Like, what's the point?
Now, here's the tragedy. I talked to him about this in one of our debates, and he said, we must work for justice in this world. I said, yes, Richard, we must.
Yes.
But let's be realistic. How privileged we are here.
How privileged we are here. Well, at least he's acknowledging his privilege. I will give him that.
We have some hope if something goes wrong that we'll get justice. But the multi-millions of people in the world will not get justice in this life. And if death is the end, they will never get justice.
Okay, so when he says we're lucky because we have hope that people will get justice in the end, right? We have hope. Only if it's true. If not, it's a false hope, and you're not privileged or lucky at all. You're in fact unlucky to be given false hope. Right? So it all hinges on whether this final justice actually exists.
I take that very seriously indeed.
Oh, I'm glad you take it seriously. Yeah, I think that the secular sort of view that we don't know, like nobody really knows for sure what comes after this life, right? Nobody knows for sure. I personally, I believe there is no afterlife. I think we just end. That's what I believe. But nobody knows for sure, right, to a high level, because nobody's come back and told us. And before you say Jesus, no, there is not very good evidence for Jesus coming back to life. No, there isn't. But we do know we have this life, right? Like, we know we live at the moment. That's why justice is important in this life. And I think for a secularist or a materialist, that is why it's so much more important to have justice in this life. Because if there is no immortal God being, then what we do matters a great deal. And whether we do have justice or we let it lapse is really important. Much more important than if you have a God and say, oh, well, everything's going to be solved in the end. I don't think that. I think that if we do not act, nobody will.
Here we are as human beings that cry for justice. And as Lewis points out, it would be a very strange world in which we got thirsty, but there was no such thing as water. In which we felt sexual desire, and there was no such thing as sexual satisfaction. That would be a very strange world.
Yeah, but, okay, so C.S. Lewis is basically... this is a terrible argument from C.S. Lewis, because he's basically saying, hey, we get thirsty, we get hungry, we get, a yearning for these things, and there's something in the world to satisfy us, right? That doesn't carry over to your divine justice, because when we're hungry and we're thirsty, we don't have to wait until we die to eat and drink and stuff like that, right? Like, it's a false analogy, because he said, oh, it'd be a very strange world. Well, why isn't the justice working like everything else, if it is the case? Right? Why isn't there justice in this world rather than the next? Why suddenly does the justice go to the next one? Like, because he's making an analogy that, hey, we get hungry, there's food in this world. We get thirsty, there's drink in this world. But justice, there has to be justice in this world. But there's not. It comes later, after this world, after we die, which isn't the same as our biological imperatives. I think that we have empathy and reciprocity, as I mentioned, and there is empathy and reciprocity in the world, right? Others reciprocate. So there is like a sort of justice that we find, but, he's sort of complaining that not everyone finds justice. Guess what, buddy? Not everybody finds food and water either. Like, do I have to point to millions of people that have starved and probably billions of people that have starved and died of dehydration? Like, just because you say that there is a cure for our wants doesn't mean it automatically exists somewhere. Like, it just pops into reality. There are plenty of people who have been hungry that have not gotten food. And the only difference between that and justice is that a lack of justice isn't inherently fatal. This is a terrible argument relayed by, I mean, look, I know John Lennox is a smart guy. I just think he doesn't apply critical thinking particularly well.
And it would be a very strange world if we cry for justice, and justice is a huge concept in our society.
Yes, it's a huge concept in our society because we don't seem to have anything else doing it. We don't seem to have a God coming down. If a God came down and handed out justice, like if he punished the evil and rewarded the good, not in the next life, in this life, then, our justice system probably wouldn't be a thing, right? It wouldn't exist because we wouldn't need to do it. The fact that it doesn't exist is why we do it.
And yet we adhere to a philosophy that denies it ultimately. There's no ultimate justice. So in the end, the terrorist who destroys you, your family, and maybe part of your nation, then shoots himself at the end, gets away with it.
Well, he doesn't get away with it. He's dead, dude. I'm not sure what part of getting away with it. But here's the thing. Right? This is wishful thinking. Okay, and this is why I created the thumbnail. This is what we've gotten to, is John Lennox basically saying, well, I don't like it that a person can do awful things and not be punished for all of eternity. Okay? Yeah, it would be awesome if the truly evil got punished for what they did in an afterlife. But what does that make it true or not? This is wishful thinking. Right? Oh, well, it'd be strange if a person did such horribly evil things and then didn't get punished after they die. How is that strange? What makes it so? Just because you don't like it doesn't mean it has to be the case. The opposite has to be the case. I don't understand this wishful thinking. It's sort of like saying, well, I don't understand how a dementia-ridden, aging idiot who used to be on reality television could become the president, so obviously he's not the president. He can't be. Because that would be awful and terrible and a complete clusterfuck. Yes, it would, and that is still true. This is what I mean by wishful thinking. It's just sort of saying, hey, reality is what I want, not what it is, right? So we've always got to be careful about this. And there's a name for it. It's called the appeal to consequence, right? It's like when you say, hey, the consequence of people not being punished for these crimes, I don't like. So therefore it is not true. Right, that's basically what he's saying. He doesn't like the idea of people getting away with crimes until they die. Okay, that doesn't make it true or not true. That doesn't make it true or not true. It's irrelevant what you like. And we've always got to be careful because humans seem to be vulnerable to this kind of thinking. I want this to be true. I don't want that to be true. And we always must be more critical of the things we want to be true, right? I once was involved in a conversation where I sort of said I would like there to be some kind of objective morals that were consistent everywhere and, just objectively true. But I don't think that's the case. And the guy said, well, you don't sound like you want objective morals. No, I do, but I know enough to be critical, to look a lot deeper at the things that I want, rather because we have a tendency to go, well, I want that to be true, so I'm going to think it is true. And that is not critical thinking. Quite the opposite, in fact. It's our bias. We have bias, especially for things we want to believe.
That seems to me to contradict every basic thing that constitutes us as humans. And what the Bible says is there will be a final judgment. And that's announced as a wonderful thing to be greeted, that God will judge.
Yeah, and the other problem is that the judgment isn't on whether you have done good or bad things like we would expect justice to be. It is on whether you have accepted Jesus as your Savior. Right? So the whole idea of justice is that people are basically given consequences for the actions they have done. But the Bible isn't like that. It only gives those consequences if you do not accept the God. It is a conditional thing. And justice should not be conditional. Justice should be if you have done a wrong, then if you have done a wrong, then you should have X happen kind of thing. It shouldn't be you should only have X happen if you did that, if you don't accept Jesus into your heart and, sort of et cetera, et cetera. So that person he's talking about, the terrorist that kills everybody and then blows himself away, he only gets punished if he doesn't accept Jesus at the last moment. If he accepts Jesus, then he's going to heaven. He's being rewarded. Justice, empathy, and reciprocity. Isn't that reasonable, objectively true ethics? I'm not sure about that. I don't think you can get to objectively true. Now, this is going to go into tangents in the chat. And this one isn't my fault, strangely enough. This tangent isn't my fault. Who would have thunk it? Look, usually it is. 100%. I will wear them. Not really, because what we're talking about with empathy is understanding how other people feel, what actions you should take. Because don't forget, morality is the code of conduct that would be accepted by all reasonable people, right? Just because you have empathy, it doesn't really say what actions you ought to take or ought not to take, right? Like it doesn't have that in it. It just is a feeling. So I think it can inform morality, but it isn't morality in and of itself. Because even if you're talking about reciprocity, you think that everybody should be paid the same for the work that they do, right? Someone does this form of work, they should be paid the same as anybody else. Okay, that's a classic example of reciprocity. That doesn't say whether everybody should be a slave or everybody should be paid well. Right? It's just a feeling of fairness that we get. So I don't think that it rises to the level of an ethic is one further. An ethic is the code of conduct that is generally agreed upon by all people in that area or that society or that group. So ethics is kind of people's morality shoved together to make a code of conduct that is applicable across a group kind of thing. So that's like business ethics, for instance, is sort of the morals of business people when they do find them somewhere, that is sort of put together and applied as a standard across the, all of business kind of thing. So, just because you have a feeling of empathy, it doesn't get you to that code of conduct. Right? Like it doesn't get you there. And empathy is also something that either applies or doesn't apply depending on how you feel about that person. And so dehumanizing people is a thing that happens a lot because it is a way to stop empathy from occurring with people. So if you dehumanize a segment of people, they no longer feel empathy with them as a human. They basically demote them in their eyes so that empathy does not apply, right? Because empathy you feel towards other humans. Well, if you demonize somebody into a vermin, for instance, that empathy will no longer trigger. And we're very aware of how certain groups, the Germans, the people did this. So no, it's still stance dependent, because you are dependent on not only your stance of what you should do with that empathy, right? How should you carry out things so people will not be miserable, kind of thing, right? Like, so just say in empathy, you don't like seeing people miserable because it makes you feel miserable. Well, your stance on how not to make people miserable still applies. It's still stance dependent, right? And there may be a ton of factors that belongs to. And also your stance on whether that person counts as another person to you also matters. So yeah, I think that no, I don't think so. I think it's still stance dependent. It's very strange to point towards a feeling that people have, like empathy is a feeling, or I mean, it's not a feeling. It is something that happens in the neurons, but the feelings that empathy give you and the feelings that reciprocity give you, and sort of say, hey, they're objective. I'm not sure how you would square that away, because those feelings only arise in your own mind as a stance you have.
Judge the world, because the person he's going to judge the world through is the same person that suffered on the cross and rose again. And that's where I bring all this together.
I don't think you bring anything together. And I really dislike that he didn't really address, you know, how a God can do that. He basically said, well, they were doing wrong things, so God was right to do this thing. He didn't address how to square it away. He just sort of said, yeah, God did it, kind of thing.
That I believe, let me put it very provocatively, I believe that if we could see what God has done with people who suffered innocently and so on, we would just be silent and have no more questions. Because if there is a God of love, as I believe there is, who's like Jesus Christ, I believe he will compensate in a way that will leave us all with nothing more to say. But we'll only see that when we've come to see the whole picture.
One of the biggest misconceptions about the Bible is that the God of the Old Testament...
Yeah, so Theo, so when you're taking a stance on something, it's like subjectively is sort of stance dependent, right? Like you have a stance on something that is not a fact, right? Like it's a stance on something. It's basically not an opinion, but it is a thing that you are taking a perspective on, means subjective, right? Like, so as soon as you're involving a stance, it is subjective. So for instance, I may have a stance that cookies are delicious, right? That's my stance. Cookies are delicious. Okay. Now, the problem comes that you might say, well, your stance is based upon objective things. Like, for instance, that sugar interacts with human receptors, making us want more of them, or producing a flavor of sweetness when it collides against your tongue, kind of thing. Yes, but it's still a stance. Even though it incorporates objective things deep down, doesn't mean it's not a stance. Okay, it's still a stance on cookies. All right, so that means it is subjective, even though there might be elements that are objective inside of it. No, Theo, no, you've misunderstood. Because no matter what I'm taught, what I believe, what values I have, what happens, the shape of the earth is objective. The actuality of the shape is not dependent on my stance of it, right? It's going to be flat or spherical, an oblate spheroid, regardless of my stance on it. Okay, now whether the flat earth is would be cooler to live on a flat earth or a spherical earth, that's a stance, right? That's stance based. If my stance is, hey, it'd be really suck to live on flat earth because it wouldn't have the same gravity and you'd be like going sideways towards the center of mass if you didn't live in the exact center, right? Even though it's based upon scientific principles that may be, it's stance dependent, right? So you're sort of mucking up whether some statement is stance derived or whether that statement is reflecting an ontological fact, right? Like, so if I say the earth is flat, that proposition is, it's objective. It's not based upon anybody's stance. But if I say chocolate chip cookies are the best cookie, that's based upon my stance, right? Like, there's no objective, independent of mind, independent of stance that comes from.
Is a God of wrath, while the God of the New Testament is a God of love. But that's simply not true. God doesn't change. He is always perfectly holy, perfectly loving.
Yeah, I don't think those are laws, Theo. Wow, you're really coming up with some wild stuff today, mate. I'm really sorry, but what laws of reciprocity are there? I mean, I don't know what you mean by laws. You seem to be talking about that like it's sort of natural laws. But I don't think there's any laws of reciprocity and peaceful coexistence, or we wouldn't have to make laws to sort of enforce that. So, laws are used in two different ways, and it's important not to conflate the two. There's like laws of nature, where the laws of nature are, physics, basically, like law of gravity, law of conservation of momentum, just the properties of the material or the universe around us, right? Like that's one form of laws. Another form of laws is the laws that we write, the prescriptive laws that society writes for citizens to follow, right? And there's nothing objective about our written laws, okay? They're subjective. We made them up to provide structure to society based upon moral considerations and ethical considerations of that society, right? Nobody thinks that laws, when applied to a society, are just objective, okay? But the laws of nature are, okay? They are. It doesn't matter what your stance on gravity is, you're still going to be affected by it. Like, it's a different thing, okay? So you've got to point out which one that you're talking about. Because if you're talking about the laws of nature, I'm sorry, but, the laws of nature can't be violated. Reciprocity can. I can be a jerk to people. I can attack people and not have a peaceful coexistence, right? Like, they can be violated. If you're talking about the laws of man, then they're subjective. I think that reciprocity is a neurological reaction that, brings up emotion. It's not like a law of the universe. Have you been watching T-Jump or something and his Church of the Better World? Because I swear that seems like parody to me. I swear. Like, I don't understand his stance on it. I really don't. Because he sort of says, hey, there's a moral law of the universe that we haven't found yet. But, like, then what evidence do you have of it? I'm so confused by his sort of position on it. I mean, it'd be nice if there was one, but do you have evidence of one? And if not, if you're sort of saying, hey, there's a moral laws of the universe that are out there somewhere, but we haven't found them, or we can't identify them, or there's no evidence of them, but they're there, then how are you any different to doing what, the Christian is doing?
Perfectly just, perfectly merciful, and perfectly righteous. He never turns one attribute off to express another. His right.
Yeah, that's a problem. That's a problem. Because perfect justice does not include mercy. Mercy, I think it was Matt Delahunty that said that mercy is a suspension of justice, and I would agree with that. I think that if perfect justice gets done, there is no room for letting someone off easy or sort of, taking things into consideration and things like that. Perfect justice is exactly what somebody deserves. Mercy is basically showing somebody compassion and not giving them what they do deserve. Right? Like those two things do not mesh up. They don't.
Righteous wrath and holy hatred of evil flow from the very same character that is perfectly loving and perfectly just. Every action God takes flows from all his attributes working together in perfect unity. In fact, the greatest demonstration of God's judgment and the greatest display of his love are both found at the cross. At the cross, God poured out his wrath on his own son.
Okay, so here's another problem. Perfect justice is the guilty being, the innocent having redress and the guilty being punished. Okay, any idea of the guilty not being punished and the innocent not having redress for the wrongs that have been committed against them is not justice at all. So if you're going to say, hey, the most perfectly innocent man was punished and the guilty get let off because of it, that's perfect justice. I have questions. Like, how is that justice at all? Like, that seems to be a perversion of justice. I do not understand. I do not understand how that can be justice if you are punishing the innocent and, being merciful to the wicked.
The truly innocent Savior, Jesus Christ, who stood in our place so that, in love, sinners like you and me could receive mercy instead of condemnation. One of the biggest dilemmas in the Bible is this: how can God be perfectly just in punishing sin and yet be the justifier of guilty sinners? Jesus Christ is the answer.
No, it's not. Because if you want to say that perfect justice is punishing the wicked and blessing the innocent, well, that is a direct contradiction to what you're saying about Jesus, that he was completely innocent and the people that get forgiven are the wicked. But it's not a matter of, the wicked get let go, they get mercy. You have to do something for it. You have to accept Jesus and worship him and, all of that kind of stuff. It's not enough that you just are innocent, for instance, right? Like if you're innocent, you've never done anything wrong. If you don't accept Jesus, you are still punished just as much as the mass murderer that takes millions of lives. How can that be perfect justice when a horrendously evil person gets punished the same as just some random atheist who just didn't, did right by people, tried to take care of them, and just didn't believe in Jesus? And in fact, if that mass murdering guy did believe in Jesus and, repented for his, sins or whatever, he still doesn't get punished. In that example, the mass murderer gets a big reward, and the good atheist guy just gets punished forever and ever and ever. Crazy.
At the cross, God remains perfectly just because Christ bore the penalty our sins deserved, fully satisfying God's justice. Because his justice has been satisfied,
then that isn't justice, because it's not just, right? Like if Jesus did nothing to deserve it and other people did, and he's punished and they're not, how can that possibly be justice? Like, this is the mental gymnastics you've got to go through. Oh, well, justice is the, wicked being punished and the good being rewarded. Jesus was good. Jesus was punished. And the wicked are rewarded. Therefore, that is justice. What? What? That's a direct contradiction. I don't understand that.
God can now be the justifier of guilty sinners. Everyone who repents and places their faith in Christ alone is declared righteous through the perfect righteousness of Christ imputed to them, and all their sins are completely forgiven. Every one of us longs for justice. We want those who abuse children, exploit the weak, commit genocide, and prey on the defenseless to be held accountable. If atheism is true, there is no ultimate moral standard and no final judge. Without an objective standard outside of humanity, there is no ultimate basis for saying that something is truly right or truly wrong. And if there's no final judge, there is no guarantee that justice will ever be done. Many of history's greatest atrocities would simply remain unresolved forever. Christianity offers a very different...
Yes, so this is known, again, here's the wishful thinking. That is a appeal to consequence as a fallacy, right? Like, it's basically saying, well, if God doesn't punish the people that have done wrong that aren't punished in this life, it gets unresolved. Yeah, it kind of sucks. Yeah, it sucks. So, you know what, I was talking to my wife about this, right? The thing that annoys me most about the red pill movement, and look, there is a lot to annoy you about the red pill movement, don't get me wrong. There's so much to annoy you about that movement, is that they've taken one of the best concepts in film and completely mangled it. Because the whole idea of the red pill, blue pill was from the Matrix, and the entire thing was a concept that the Wachowski sisters, they examined and keep examining in depth is, would you be happy with a comfortable lie or an uncomfortable truth? Right? And don't get me started on the way that they're not using that whole red pill thing correctly, because it's supposed to be like something that you don't want to be true, but it is anyway. Right? Like, the whole idea was, oh, well, the Matrix is so much better than the horrible world, you know, that is currently existing. It would be nice to be in this, you know, comfortable, you know, modern society that the Matrix is. But that's not the truth. Right? The truth is the truth. It's objectively true. It isn't dependent on anything. It is just something called ontologically or actuality truth. And would you rather a comforting lie or the truth? And me, I would like the truth, right? Even, you know, the best example I could find of it, or not that I could find, but the one that came to mind when I was talking to my wife was An Inconvenient Truth by Al Gore, right? The carbon dioxide that we're spewing into the atmosphere is changing the climate in a way that's detrimental for humans. It's a massive problem. It's got no ready solution. It is an uncomfortable truth. It is something we would not like to be true, but it is. You know, like, it is one of those things. So the way that they're using it is in, oh, this is the actual truth. Well, it doesn't matter if it's the actual truth. It has to be an uncomfortable truth to be a red pill situation. And it annoys me that they've mangled that. It's annoyed me. Yeah, no, Leo, Theo, I don't do presentations, mate. Like, you know, if you want a debate, that's one thing. I'll happily do a debate where you can do a presentation. But I'm not signing up for like somebody sits down and shows me slides. If you want a conversation, I'll be in Discord for a little bit afterwards. No, they're okay. They're okay, Kaylee. No, they're okay. It's okay. It's okay. No, they're fine. Theo's fine. Theo's fine. But yeah, I mean, I can talk to you, but yeah, no, I'm not sitting down for someone to make a presentation to me. That is not happening. No way. Like, seriously. I have conversations, I have debates, pick one. But I'll be in Discord for a little while after if you do want to talk. If not, that's fine. But yeah, I'm not being lectured for a course that I didn't sign up to, mate. If I wanted to be lectured, I would sign up for university, my friend. I would not, you know, take them from random people on the internet. Maybe I would. I don't know. But yeah, no, I'm not doing that.
Objective morality, real right and wrong.
Right, and objective morality, just because you want there to be, doesn't mean there is. I want there to be objective morality. Okay, but like I said, due to human bias, we don't just look at what we want and automatically assume it's true, because that is wishful thinking. Okay, that is wishing what we want to be true, and that is a horrible way to go about what is determining to be true, because a lot of things that are true we don't like. And so I don't know why they're living in this dream world of, you know, oh, we've got to We've got to believe in the things that we want to. Look, what are you doing? Manifesting? Like, seriously? No, that is not a good way to find out what is true. We have to be skeptical. We've got to go with the evidence and then form our beliefs based upon the evidence that we have. Rational, logical, reasonable conclusions based upon the evidence rather than, well, I want it to be true. It'd suck if it wasn't. Yeah, sometimes things just suck, my man. I've had a lifetime of experiencing that. There's a lot of things I wish weren't true. And yeah. Oh, good night. Good night, Kaylee. You're good too. You're fine too. You're fine too.
Truly
always
exists
lovely.
Because it is grounded in God, the perfect moral lawgiver. Good and evil are not matters of human opinion, but are defined by his holy character. Every act of evil will be answered.
Yeah, if that's the case, then every single action taken in the Old Testament, like, oh, I don't know, having children ripped apart by she-bears for making fun of a bald guy, is a moral act. Because he was in character when he did that, didn't he? People have questions, especially about the she-bears, like why she-bears specifically, but never mind.
No injustice is forgotten. No victim is overlooked. The God who judged evil in the Old Testament is the same God who judged sin at the cross, and he is the same God who will one day judge the world in perfect righteousness. The good news is that God has made a way for redemption. Every sin will be judged. The only question is,
no, it won't. No, it won't. Because all you've got to do is appeal to Jesus and then you get a get out of jail free card. Like, that's the thing. Every sin will be judged. Really? Really? If you sin and then ask for forgiveness, are you going to be judged for that sin? No! You're not, are you? Funny that.
who will bear God's judgment? Either Jesus Christ bore God's wrath in the place of all who repent and trust in him, or you will stand before God on Judgment Day.
Look, maybe I'm an idiot. Call me an idiot. Please do. But if there is some virtuous, innocent man who is going to be viciously punished for the things that I have done wrong, I'm against that. I want to be held responsible for the things that I have done wrong. Come what may. I don't want somebody else receiving the consequences for the multitude of things I've done wrong in my life. Why is anybody happy with that? Like, you have this awesome dude who's just a fantastic, the most awesome dude in history, and you're going, well, yeah, I know I fucked up, but go and take it out on him, God. Go and fuck up that guy. I don't want it. I don't want it. How is that moral? Like, I want to be responsible for what I do, and I want to hold other people responsible for what they do. It's kind of, this is wild to think that this is justice.
And bear his righteous wrath for your sins. God has not changed. His justice has never changed. His love has never changed.
Really? He's still on the she-bears ripping apart people track? Is that children? Is that she-bears killing children? He hasn't changed that? Oh, okay.
And because of that, there is both perfect justice and perfect mercy for all who trust in Christ.
Yeah, as Matt Delahunty pointed out, those two things are antithetical to one another. You can't have perfect justice and perfect mercy, because mercy is sort of saying, hey, ordinarily justice would have you, executed or imprisoned for life, but the court is going to show you mercy, right? It is an exemption or a suspension of justice. It is sort of saying, hey, what would be just is this, but mercy is not doing that to show compassion or to not hand down the judgment that should be. I think that that's a bit ridiculous. And I'm right on board with Matt Delahunty that those two things, like, you can't have perfect mercy and perfect justice. Because if justice was perfect, everybody would get what they deserve. Mercy is holding off on giving people what they deserve in order to show compassion or have some other goal in mind. You show mercy. So yeah, I think that they sort of think that mercy is sort of treating people nicely, and that isn't what mercy is. Just because I say hello to my postman in the street doesn't mean I'm showing him mercy. No. Mercy is when somebody wrongs me and, they deserve a certain action from me and I do not perform it because I am showing mercy. But if it was justice, certain things would happen to them. So I think we're all on board there. But this is what gets me. John Lennox is supposed to be one of the one of the best Christian apologists. And he's just doing this fallacy of appeal to consequence, this wishful thinking, this I don't like what this entails, so it cannot be true. I don't like it if people aren't punished after they die. So heaven's got to be true. God's got to be real because I don't like it if he's not. That doesn't even qualify as an argument. Like what's real and what isn't is not based upon, how it suits you or whether you like it or not, or whether it doesn't make sense to you if people aren't punished. Like that isn't a thing. Any more than, oh, well, I don't like it if I don't win $1 million tomorrow, so I have to win $1 million. No. Life doesn't just show up and give you what you expect, and I expect afterlife to be the same. Whatever happens after you die is going to happen regardless of how you feel about it. And if there is, no punishment for the most horrendous people who have lived after we end, then that is the case. Sort of going, well, I don't like it. It doesn't get you anywhere. I don't like it either, but that's the way it is. Or at least that's what I think of the way it is, because there's no evidence to suggest otherwise. But convincing yourself that this isn't true because you don't like it, it's a dangerous road down to really poor critical thinking. Really terrible critical thinking where you basically don't think reality is as it is because you can't possibly accept it like that. I'm sorry. We have to accept reality as it is. And I think that where justice is concerned, because there is no justice in the universe by default or after we die or, out there somewhere provided by a omniscient, omnipotent, executioner, we have to do it in this life. It is something that is it's more important. Because we can't just go, well, God's got it. Let God sort them out in the next life. That's why justice is important now. Because if we don't provide it, I don't think a God will. It makes it so much more important. And let's face it, that justice is not necessarily justice. It's well, do you believe in me? Yes. Okay, you get a free pass from all the stuff you've done. Do you believe in me? No. Well, even though you haven't really done anything wrong in your life, you're going straight to the burning pits. See you. Is that really justice? Really? Wild, right? Yeah, I don't know how that counts as justice. I don't know how you square that away. I find it very odd that they will sort of say that. I mean, you would have to say that, some of the Nazis as Catholics and Christians who believed in Jesus would be in heaven, while Steve Irwin, who wasn't a Christian, is now in hell. Crikey, square that one away. How dare you? But yeah, it's just, I really think this wishful thinking is wild, absolutely wild. But that's John Lennox, apparently one of the best apologists for Christianity, and if that's the case, woo, we've got problems. Well, we don't have problems. The Christians have problems. Don't forget, I do have a debate tomorrow. I would love to see you there. I wanna try and get these debates up and running. It's an atheist channel, which I don't think there's enough of them around that do debate and, civil intellectual debate. We want to have debates where it's not just a garbage fire of, people yelling at one another and carrying on like children. Hey, Snowbogan, how you doing? Kip, always good to see you, mate. But yeah, we want to have engagement that is passionate, you know, confronting, and a clear disagreement between people, but at least do it in a way that isn't two people having a tantrum. So I really believe in this channel. I really believe in what we're doing at the Thought Experiment. I really want to get you on board. So please do come along, show your support. If not, watch it afterwards. I will be there, of course. I'm debating, and I would love for this to get going and be sort of the best channel for debate on YouTube. That's what I want, because we need a place where we can have engagement and challenge people and discuss with Christians without people yelling racist crap, or it just being an absolute mess. So please do come along. It's one of those multi-streams. Right, I did not know that, which I probably should have. So it's either on the Thought Experiment or Skeptic Haven. Okay, gotcha. But thank you so much for joining me, everybody. A big thank you to Stop the Stupidity. Always just a complete and utter Chad, giving the big old 10 readerships. I hope you got one, and I will be back with a member stream very soon in an internet near you. Thank you so much. Be kind to yourself. I think that, yeah, we all do stuff wrong. Try to be kind to yourself. Even though you have to accept consequences, if you do have something happen, emotions do flood, and like I was saying earlier, you act like a tantrum, you throw a tantrum in a debate. Be kind to yourself. It happens. Don't be, oh, my life's over. It's not. Don't be, oh, I can't believe I did that. I'm such a bad person. You're not. We all get flooded with emotion. We all lose our shit at times. It happens. It doesn't make you anything. You're not a bad person. You're not a horrible human being. We just have to deal with these emotions, and we try to deal with them in a healthy and responsible way, and fail sometimes. It's okay. It doesn't mean that you're wrong for having those emotions. It doesn't mean that you're wrong for experiencing a certain feeling. It just means there's a better way. You ought to have done it some other way. It doesn't make you evil. No one's inherently evil. Okay, there's just good ways at dealing with our emotions and bad ways. And I want to try to advocate for good ways of dealing with emotions, not bad ways. Try to be kind to others. Absolutely, because other people are doing exactly the damn same thing. Exactly the same thing, trying to deal with this, emotional meat brain that's sending them all kinds of, stuff to deal with. But thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. The pleasure is all mine, not yours. Give it back. Thank you. Do take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.
To what new horizons can we look now? Where are tomorrow's opportunities? The frontiers of the future are not on any map. But now, what's ahead of us?